Whatever the reason is you're doing this, focus on that.
Trust me, I've been through worse.
Knowing that the woman you loved was this. Go away.
I'm putting together a special team. Join me, but you will have your revenge. They must be controlled.
Well. Look what the cat dragged in.
Making him indestructible.
Logan isn't the only piece of this puzzle.
Before Logan became the legendary Wolverine we know today, his story began with betrayal, rage, and an unbreakable bond turned to rivalry. X-Men Origins, Wolverine takes a step into his past, revealing secrets that shaped Marvel's most iconic mutant. Stay tuned as we break down the movie and uncover some amazing facts. Only here on S Film Studio in 1845, a young boy named James Howlett Trochevan lives in northern Canada. He is often sick and frail. One night, his father is killed by the groundskeeper, Thomas Logan, Aaron Jeffrey, who is a violent drunk. Overcome with shock and anger, James's mutation awakens for the first time. A bone claws extend from his hands, and he kills Thomas. With his dying breath, Thomas reveals that he is actually James's real father. Horrified by James's new powers, his mother rejects him completely. Heartbroken, James runs away into the forest with Thomas's son, Victor Liev Schreiber, who is his half-brother. Over the next century, the two fight side by side in many wars, including the Civil War, both World Wars, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. While James fights with honor, Victor grows to enjoy the violence and killing. In 1973, Victor attempts to assault a village woman, and after killing a senior officer, he is stopped by James. Both brothers are sentenced to execution by firing squad, but they survive. Major William Stryker, Danny Houston, takes them into custody and offers them a place in Team X, a group of mutants with special abilities. The team includes Agent Zero, Daniel Henney, Swordsman Wade Wilson, Ryan Reynolds, Teleporter John Wraith, Will.I.M, Strongman Fred Dukes, Kevin Durand, and Electrical Manipulator Chris Bradley, Dominic Monaghan. They carry out missions for Stryker, including an attack in Nigeria where Stryker searches for the source of adamantium, a rare indestructible metal. When villagers refuse to reveal its location, Stryker orders Victor to kill them all, including women and children. Disgusted by this cruelty, James leaves the team. 6 years later, James now goes by the name Logan and lives peacefully in Canada with his girlfriend, Kayla Silverfox, Lynn Collins. He works at a lumber yard and tries to live a normal life. But Stryker finds him again, warning that someone is hunting and killing former Team X members. Victor is revealed to be the killer, murdering Wilson and Bradley. Soon after, Victor kills Kayla, and when Logan goes after him, they fight to a stalemate. Victor tells Logan that Kayla held him back from embracing his true potential. He breaks Logan's bone claws and leaves him badly injured. Stryker offers Logan a chance to defeat Victor by bonding adamantium to his skeleton. Before the operation, Logan asks for new dog tags engraved with the name Wolverine, inspired by a story Kayla once told him. After surviving the painful procedure, Stryker orders that Logan's memory be erased, but Logan overhears and escapes the facility. Taking refuge in a barn with a kind elderly couple, Logan receives food, clothes, and a motorcycle. Soon after, Agent Zero arrives, kills the couple, and attacks Logan. Logan fights back and kills Zero, realizing Stryker was behind the attack. Determined to stop Stryker, Logan searches for answers. He finds Wraith and Dukes, who tell him Stryker has been capturing mutants and experimenting on them at a secret facility known as the Island. They direct Logan to Remy Gambit LeBeau, Taylor Kitsch, a mutant who escaped the island and knows its location. In New Orleans, Logan confronts Gambit, who mistakes him for an enemy and attacks. Meanwhile, Victor kills Wraith, and Logan fights him again. Before Logan can finish him, Gambit interrupts, allowing Victor to escape. After a brief fight with Gambit, Logan convinces him he's not working for Stryker, and Gambit agrees to take him to the island, located at 3 Mile Island. At the facility, Logan discovers that Kayla is alive. She had secretly worked with Stryker to protect her sister, who was also captured. Feeling betrayed, Logan leaves. Victor later confronts Stryker for his reward, demanding the adamantium bonding, but Stryker refuses, saying Victor would not survive the process. Angry, Victor tries to kill Kayla, but Logan hears her screams and rushes back, defeating Victor in a brutal fight. Meanwhile, Stryker activates Weapon 11, a mutant hybrid soldier created from Wade Wilson's body, combined with the powers of several other mutants. Stryker calls him the Deadpool. Logan and Kayla free the imprisoned mutants, who are guided to safety by a young Scott Summers, Tim Pockett, until they are met by Professor Charles Xavier, Patrick Stewart, who offers them a refuge. Logan stays behind to fight Deadpool. After a fierce battle at the top of a cooling tower, Logan is nearly killed until Victor unexpectedly returns to help him. The two brothers briefly unite to take down Deadpool. Logan ultimately decapitates him, and Deadpool's falling body triggers explosions that destroy the tower. Victor leaves, While Gambit saves Logan from the collapsing structure, Logan finds Kayla badly wounded. Before dying, she uses her powers to make Stryker drop his weapon and forces him to walk until your feet bleed. Stryker had already shot Logan in the head with adamantium bullets, which do not kill him but erase his memory. When Gambit offers to stay with him, Logan refuses, choosing to walk his own path. In a mid-credits scene, Stryker is arrested by military police for the murder of General Munson. In a post-credits scene, Weapon 11 is shown alive, his severed head moving as he makes a shush gesture, revealing he survived. X-Men Origins: Wolverine is a 2009 American superhero movie based on the Marvel Comics character Wolverine. It is the fourth film in the X-Men series, the first in the Wolverine spin-off trilogy, and also works as a prequel to the 2000 film X-Men. The movie was directed by Gavin Hood and written by David Benioff and Skip Woods. Hugh Jackman, who also produced the film, stars as Wolverine, alongside Liev Schreiber, Danny Huston, Dominic Monaghan, and Ryan Reynolds. The story explores Wolverine's early life as James Howlett, his years working with Major William Stryker's Team X, how his skeleton was fused with the indestructible metal adamantium during the Weapon X program, and his complicated relationship with his half-brother Victor Creed. Most of the movie was filmed in Australia and New Zealand, with Canada also used for some scenes. Shooting took place between January and May 2008. However, production faced many problems along the way. Bad weather caused delays, Hugh Jackman's busy schedule slowed things down, and the script was still being rewritten in Los Angeles even while filming had already started in Australia. There were also creative clashes between director Gavin Hood and the studio executives at Fox about the direction of the film. On top of that, an unfinished version of the movie leaked online a full month before its official release. X-Men Origins: Wolverine hit theaters on May 1, 2009. Released by 20th Century Fox, the movie received mixed reviews from critics but was still a big box office success. It debuted as #1 in North America and went on to earn $179 million in the US and Canada, and a total of $373 million worldwide. Two follow-up movies continued Wolverine's story: The Wolverine, 2013, and Logan, 2017. Meanwhile, starting with Deadpool, 2016, Ryan Reynolds returned as a new version of Wade Wilson, different from his Origins appearance. Eventually, both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds reunited on screen in the 2024 film Deadpool Wolverine. The casting of Hugh Jackman as Logan, also known as Wolverine, in X-Men Origins: Wolverine marked a continuation of one of the most iconic superhero portrayals in film history. Jackman, an Australian actor who had risen to prominence through stage work and smaller film roles, first landed the role in the original X-Men film in 2000 after a last-minute replacement. Originally, Scottish actor Chris Scott was set to play Wolverine, but scheduling conflicts with Mission Impossible 2 forced him to drop out, paving the way for Jackman. This fortuitous turn of events not only launched Jackman's career into the stratosphere but also cemented his association with the character across multiple films. By the time X-Men Origins: Wolverine came around in 2009, Jackman had already portrayed Wolverine in 3 X-Men movies, making him the natural choice to reprise the role in this prequel that explored the character's backstory. His deep understanding of Wolverine's complex psyche, a mix of rage, vulnerability, and immortality, allowed him to delve deeper into the origin story, focusing on Logan's early life, his mutant abilities manifesting in childhood, and his fraught relationship with his brother. Jackman's preparation for the role was rigorous and well documented, emphasizing physical transformation to embody the feral mutant. For X-Men Origins: Wolverine, he underwent an intense weight training regimen, gaining significant muscle mass to portray a younger, more primal version of Logan. He worked with trainers to incorporate high-intensity interval training and heavy lifting, altering his diet to include high-protein meals while avoiding the use of performance-enhancing substances. Interestingly, in a key scene where Wolverine emerges from the adamantium infusion tank, no digital enhancements were used on Jackman's physique. showcasing his natural build achieved through months of dedication. This commitment extended beyond the physical. Jackman immersed himself in the comic book source material, drawing from Wolverine's Canadian roots and his history as a soldier and various wars. His involvement went further as he served as a producer through his company, Seed Productions, influencing casting and creative decisions to ensure the film stayed true to the character's essence. Critics and fans alike praised Jackman's performance, noting how his charisma and intensity carried the film, even amid its narrative flaws. His salary for the role reportedly reached $25 million, reflecting his star power and the studio's confidence in his draw at the box office. Moving to the antagonistic counterpart, Liev Schreiber's casting as Victor Creed, Logan's half-brother who becomes the villainous Sabretooth, brought a layer of familial intensity to the film. Schreiber, known for his dramatic roles in films like The Hurricane and Kate Leopold, where he had previously worked with Jackman, was not the initial choice. Tyler Mane, who played Sabretooth in the first X-Men film, expressed interest in reprising the role, but the filmmakers opted for a fresh take to align with the prequel's tone. Schreiber's selection was driven by his ability to convey a competitive, animalistic edge, mirroring Wolverine's darker impulses. Director Gavin Hood and Jackman likened the brothers' dynamic to the Borg-McEnroe tennis rivalry, emphasizing their codependent enmity. Schreiber himself described Creed as the pure animal side of Wolverine, a character he approached with a blend of menace and sympathy. To prepare, Schreiber bulked up significantly, gaining 40 pounds of muscle through a structured workout plan that included weightlifting and fight training. He had a background in studying fight choreography and even aspired to dance like Jackman, which informed their on-set stunt work. The two actors pushed each other during filming, improvising stunts to heighten the realism of their confrontations. Schreiber drew inspiration from the Wolverine comics he loved as a child, appreciating their urban grit. His performance was widely acclaimed for adding depth to what could have been a one-dimensional villain, with reviewers highlighting his monstrous edginess that complemented Jackman's portrayal. Despite not returning for later films like Logan due to narrative choices and scheduling, Schreiber's Sabretooth remains a fan favorite, often cited as one of the film's strongest elements. His casting decision underscored the importance of chemistry between leads, as his prior rapport with Jackman translated seamlessly to the screen. Danny Huston's portrayal of Major William Stryker, the manipulative military figure central to Wolverine's transformation, represented a recasting from previous X-Men films. Brian Cox, who originated the role in X2, X-Men United, expressed interest in returning, suggesting CGI aging techniques similar to those used for Patrick Stewart and Ian Cullen in X-Men: The Last Stand. However, the production team chose Huston to bring a younger, more nuanced energy to Stryker. Interestingly, Liev Schreiber was initially in negotiations for Stryker before shifting to Sabretooth. Huston, son of legendary director John Huston and known for roles in films like The Constant Gardener, was drawn to Stryker's complexity, a man who both empathizes with and despises mutants, driven by personal tragedy involving his mutant son. Huston's approach emphasized Stryker's paternal yet truthless nature, comparing him to a racehorse breeder who nurtures but discards his experiments. This layered performance added psychological depth to the film's antagonist, portraying Stryker as a father figure rather than a cartoonish villain. Preparation involved researching military protocols and mutant lore to ground the character in realism. While some critics felt the recasting disrupted continuity, Huston's gravitas was praised for elevating the role, making Stryker a compelling foil to Wolverine's moral struggles. His casting highlighted the franchise's willingness to refresh familiar characters for prequel narratives, balancing legacy with new interpretations. Lynn Collins was selected to play Kayla Silverfox, Wolverine's love interest with tactile hypnosis powers, after Michelle Monaghan declined due to scheduling conflicts. Collins, who had appeared in films like The Merchant of Venice and 13 Going on 30, brought a grounded presence to the Native American, Blackfoot/Niitsitapi, character, emphasizing her manipulative abilities in a male-dominated mutant world. The casting drew some controversy, as noted in media like Indian Country Today, for perpetuating redface by casting a non-Indigenous actress in an Indigenous role, echoing historical Hollywood practices. Despite this, Collins prepared by studying hypnosis techniques and Native American history to authentically portray Silver Fox's heritage and powers. She described her role as countering the testosterone-heavy mutants with feminine persuasion, training and fight scenes to hold her own against Jackman and Schreiber. Her chemistry with Jackman was key, depicting a tragic romance that humanizes Wolverine. Reception was mixed while her performance was solid. The character's pawn-like role in Stryker's scheme drew criticism for underutilizing her potential. Collins' casting reflected the film's attempt to diversify its ensemble, though it sparked discussions on representation in superhero cinema. Ryan Reynolds' involvement as Wade Wilson, who becomes the experimental Deadpool, was a pivotal casting choice that inadvertently shaped the future of the character. Reynolds, known for comedic roles in films like Van Wilder and The Proposal, was enthusiastic about playing the merc with a mouth, bringing his signature wit to the early scenes. However, the film's depiction of Deadpool with his mouth sewn shut and altered powers deviated wildly from the comics, leading to fan backlash. This version was an amalgam of mutants, created as Weapon 11, and Reynolds later joked about it laying the groundwork for his solo Deadpool films. Reynolds prepared by mastering swordplay and banter, but the character's transformation limited his performance. Despite the controversy, his casting introduced Deadpool to live action, and Reynolds credits the experience with forging his friendship with Jackman, which influenced Deadpool Wolverine years later. Critics noted the wasted potential, but Reynolds' charisma shone through, proving his suitability for the role. In hindsight, this decision highlighted the risks of adapting fan-favorite characters, ultimately catalyzing a more faithful portrayal in subsequent movies. Taylor Kitsch's casting as Remy LeBeau, aka Gambit, fulfilled long-standing fan demands for the Cajun mutant's inclusion. Kitsch, emerging from TV's Friday Night Lights, was chosen for his charismatic swagger and ability to handle kinetic energy manipulation. His preparation involved card-throwing training and adopting a Louisiana accent, adding flair to Gambit's rogue persona. The role was brief but impactful, with Kitsch's performance earning praise for capturing the character's charm amid the film's chaos. Plans for a Gambit solo film fell through, but his casting demonstrated the franchise's expansion of the mutant roster. Will.I.am, the Black Eyed Peas musician, made his major acting debut as John Wraith, the teleporting mutant. He beat out Quinton Jackson for the role, drawn to Wraith's similarity to Nightcrawler's powers. Boot camp training prepared him physically, though an on-set accident scarred his knuckles. His performance was earnest, adding diversity to Team X, but critics found it underwhelming, viewing it as stunt casting. Still, it showcased musicians transitioning to acting in blockbusters. Kevin Durant's Fred Dukes, The Blob, involved a physical transformation from fighter to a beast boxer. Durant, a fan of the series, lobbied for the role after hearing about the project. He wore a cooling suit for the fat prosthetics, enduring discomfort for authenticity. His portrayal mixed humor and menace, with the Blob misunderstanding leading to a memorable fight. David Harbour auditioned but was deemed too fit at the time. Dominic Monaghan, from Lost fame, played Chris Bradley, aka Bolt, with electricity powers. Initially rumored for Beak, he brought subtlety to the minor role, preparing with electrical effect research. His casting added genre credibility, though the character's limited screen time left fans wanting more. Daniel Henney as Agent Zero, the marksman, brought international appeal. Known from Korean dramas, he trained in firearms for precision scenes, enhancing Team X's dynamics. Younger versions included Troye Sivan's child Logan, capturing early ferocity, and Michael James Olsen as young Victor, setting up the Brotherhood. Cameos like Patrick Stewart as Professor X, aged via CGI, and Tahina Tazi as Emma, Silver Fox's sister, tied the prequel to the broader universe. Scott Adkins performed stunts for Weapon 11, doubling Reynolds in action sequences. Overall, the casting blended established stars with rising talents, prioritizing physicality and chemistry, though some choices sparked debates on fidelity and representation. X-Men Origins, Wolverine, 2009, a comprehensive analysis, production development and pre-production. The journey of X-Men Origins, Wolverine began with screenwriter David Liev, who pursued the project for almost 3 years before being hired to write the script in October 2004. Liev spent considerable time preparing for the screenplay, rereading Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X story, as well as Chris Claremont and Frank Miller's 1982 limited series on the character, which he considered his favorite storyline. The 2001 limited series Origin, which reveals Wolverine's life before Weapon X, also served as a significant source of inspiration for the film's narrative structure. Hugh Jackman collaborated extensively on the script development, wanting to create more of a character piece compared to the previous X-Men films. This collaborative approach reflected Jackman's deep investment in the character and his desire to explore Wolverine's psychological complexity. However, the script underwent multiple revisions when Skip Woods, who had previously written Hitman for Fox, was later hired to revise and rewrite Liev's original screenplay. David Ayer also contributed to the script during this development phase. Liev had initially aimed for a darker and a bit more brutal story, writing it with an R rating in mind, although he acknowledged that the film's final tone would ultimately rest with the producers and director. This creative tension between the writer's vision and studio expectations would become a recurring theme throughout the production process. The inclusion of specific characters required careful consideration of their comic book origins and film adaptations. Deadpool had been developed for his own film by Reynolds and David S. Goyer at New Line Cinema in 2003, but the project fell apart as they focused on Blade, Trinity and an aborted spin-off. Liev wrote Deadpool into the script in a manner that Jackman described as fun but would deviate from some of the character's traditional traits. Similarly, Gambit was a character whom the filmmakers had previously tried to incorporate into earlier X-Men films, with Jackman appreciating the character as a loose cannon like Wolverine. The pre-production phase encountered significant challenges when the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike began. Before the strike commenced, James Vanderbilt and Scott Silver were hired for a last-minute rewrite, adding another layer of complexity to an already evolving screenplay. Liev finished his draft in October 2006, and Jackman stated there would be a year before shooting, as he was scheduled to start filming Australia during 2007. Director Gavin Hood was announced for the project in July 2007 for a planned 2008 release. Previously, X-Men and X2 director Bryan Singer and X-Men: The Last Stand director Brett Ratner had expressed interest in returning to the franchise, while Alexandre Araya and Len Wiseman also sought the directorial position. Notably, Zack Snyder, who had been approached for The Last Stand, declined this film because he was directing Watchmen. Hood, while not originally a comic book fan, explained that he realized that the character of Wolverine, "I think his great appeal lies in the fact that he's someone who in some ways, is filled with a great deal of self-loathing by his own nature and he's constantly at war with his own nature." This psychological understanding of the character influenced Hood's approach to the film's thematic content, focusing on Wolverine's internal struggle between his animalistic savagery and noble human qualities. One significant creative decision involved making the implied blood relation of Wolverine and Sabretooth explicit, with Hood suggesting they be portrayed as half-brothers to help build up the emotional power of the film. This change from the comics represented the filmmakers' attempt to create stronger emotional stakes for the central conflict. Filming preliminary shooting took place at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney during late 2007, with principal photography beginning in January 2008 in New Zealand. Dunedin was selected as one of the primary filming locations, though the production faced some local controversies. The Queenstown Lakes District Council disputed the Department of Labor's decision to allow Fox to store explosives in the local ice skating rink, forcing the studio to move some explosives to alternative locations. The explosives were utilized for dramatic sequences, including a shot of the exploding Hudson farm that required 13 cameras to capture effectively. Jackman and Palermo's Was Productions reached an agreement with the council to allow recycling specialists on set to advise the production on environmental responsibility. This commitment to environmental consciousness reflected growing industry awareness of production impacts on local ecosystems. A significant challenge emerged during filming when Hood revealed that the screenplay was still incomplete as filming began, with the production in Australia receiving regular new script pages from Los Angeles, sometimes arriving the night before shooting. This situation created considerable stress for the cast and crew, who had to adapt to evolving storylines and dialogue changes on short notice. Filming continued at Fox Studios, where most of the shooting occurred, and in New Orleans, Louisiana. Cockatoo Island was used for Stryker's facility, with the enormous existing building saving money on digitally expanding sets. The production was predicted to generate 60 million Australian dollars for Sydney's economy, highlighting the significant economic impact of major film productions on local markets. Principal photography officially ended by May 23, though the second unit continued filming in New Zealand until March 23 and were scheduled to continue for 2 weeks following the first unit's completion. This extended filming period included a flashback sequence showing Logan during the Normandy landings, which was shot at Blacksmiths, New South Wales. Creative tensions arose between Hood and Fox executives regarding the film's direction. One significant dispute involved the depiction of Wolverine as an Army veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder, with studio executives arguing that audiences would not be interested in such heavy thematic content. The studio had 2 replacement directors lined up before Richard Donner, husband of producer Lauren Schuler Donner, flew to Australia to mediate the on-set tensions. Hood later remarked about these creative conflicts, out of healthy and sometimes very rigorous debate, things get better. I hope the film's better because of the debates. If nobody were talking about us, we'd be in trouble. He added that both he and Thomas Rothman were forceful personalities in creative meetings but maintained they never had a stand-up argument. In January 2009, after delays caused by weather conditions and scheduling conflicts, including Hugh Jackman's publicity commitments for Australia, production moved to Vancouver. Most of the Vancouver filming took place at Kitsite Lano Secondary School and the University of British Columbia. This location work included finishing scenes with Reynolds, who had been working on 2 other films during principal photography, demonstrating the complex scheduling challenges of major studio productions. Post-production. The post-production phase of X-Men Origins, Wolverine proved to be one of the most technically demanding aspects of the entire production. More than 1,000 shots of Wolverine contained visual effects, requiring the coordination of 3 effects supervisors and 17 different companies. This massive undertaking highlighted the film's heavy reliance on digital effects to bring the mutant powers and action sequences to life. Hydraulics served as the most prominent visual effects company, having previously worked on the X-Men trilogy. They were specifically responsible for the climactic battle at 3 Mile Island and the realization of Gambit's unique mutant powers. Many elements were completely generated through computer-generated imagery, including the adamantium injection machine, scenes with Gambit's plane, and Wolverine tearing through a door with his newly enhanced claws. The creation of Wolverine's bone claws presented particular technical challenges. CGI bone claws were created for certain scenes because the practical props did not look convincing in close-up shots. This decision reflected the ongoing balance between practical effects and digital enhancement that characterizes modern superhero filmmaking. Extensive use of matte paintings enhanced the film's visual scope beyond the physical filming locations. Matte World Digital created 5 different mattes for the film's final scene, a dramatic pullback depicting the destroyed 3 Mile Island. Director Gavin Hood provided company Hatch Productions with photographs of Fabulous as reference material for the African sequences. These matte paintings allowed the filmmakers to create expansive environments that would have been cost-prohibitive to build or film in actual locations. Director Gavin Hood announced that multiple secret endings existed for the film, with different endings appearing in different theatrical prints. One version showed Wolverine drinking in a Japanese bar, with the bartender asking if he was drinking to forget, to which Logan replied that he was drinking to remember. The other ending showed Weapon 11 on the rubble of the destroyed tower, attempting to touch his severed head. This multiple ending strategy was designed to encourage repeat viewings and generate additional audience discussion. However, the post-production period was severely compromised by a significant security breach. On March 31, 2009, a full-length DVD-quality workprint of the film without a timecode or watermark, containing some unfinished effects shots, different typeface for titles and casting, and alternate sound effects, was leaked online. The studio claimed they would be able to determine the source of the leak using forensic marks embedded in the workprint. The FBI and MP immediately began investigating the illegal posting. Fox estimated the workprint was downloaded roughly 4.5 million times by the time Wolverine was released in theaters. By 2014, Fox estimated that a minimum of 15 million people had downloaded the leaked version, representing a massive breach of pre-release security. The leaked print contained a reference to Rising Sun Pictures, an Australian visual effects company working on the film. However, the company denied ever having a full copy of the film. Executive producer Thomas Rothman claimed the leaked version lacked 10 minutes added during pickups in January 2009. Contradicting this claim, the theatrical version of the film contained no extra scenes that were not included in the leaked workprint, with both versions running exactly 107 minutes. The investigation ultimately traced the original upload to Gilberto Sanchez, a Bronx resident who uploaded the film to Megaupload in March 2009. According to Sanchez, he purchased the unlicensed DVD copy from a Korean man. Sanchez was sentenced to 1 year in federal prison for his role in the leak. Later revelations indicated that the leak originated from a preview copy prepared for Rupert Murdoch at short notice with inadequate security measures. The leak incident had significant ramifications within the industry. Roger Friedman, a freelance gossip blogger for Fox News, a channel also owned by Fox's parent company News Corporation, was fired for writing a review of the film using the leaked unfinished copy. His article for the Fox News website, which described how easy it was to find and download the film, was immediately removed. Industry observers criticized Friedman's decision, with Screen Rant's Bruce Simmons noting the irony of an employee of the parent company bragging about stealing their content. Music. The score for X-Men Origins Wolverine was composed by Harry Gregson Williams, mixed by Malcolm Luker, engineered by Costa Kateslis, and featured Martin Tillman on electric cello. The collaboration between Gregson Williams and director Gavin Hood had an interesting origin story that predated the film's production. Gregson Williams first met Hood during the 63rd Golden Globe Awards dinner party, where they were both nominated. The Gregson Williams for The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, The Witch and the Wardrobe, and Hood for Tsatsi, both 2005. Their collaborative discussions at this event led to Gregson Williams's initial interest in scoring the film. The score was recorded at the prestigious Newman Scoring Stage at 20th Century Fox Studios, with Gregson Williams conducting a 78-piece orchestra and a 40-member vocal choir. This large-scale musical production reflected the epic scope that the filmmakers intended for Wolverine's origin story. The combination of full orchestra and choir allowed for both intimate character moments and grand action sequences to be supported by appropriately scaled musical accompaniment. Tilde Diarises Se Saraband released the soundtrack on April 28, 2009. Just 3 days before the film's theatrical release. The timing of this release was designed to build additional anticipation for the film while providing fans with the opportunity to experience Gregson Williams's score independently of the visual narrative. The musical approach to X-Men Origins Wolverine represented a departure from the previous X-Men film scores, reflecting both the different directorial vision and the more personal, character-focused nature of Wolverine's individual story. Where the earlier films had emphasized ensemble themes, this score needed to focus on the psychological journey of a single character while still maintaining the epic scope expected of a major superhero film. Released theatrical X-Men Origins Wolverine followed a carefully orchestrated international release strategy designed to maximize global box office performance. The film was released on April 29, 2009, in the UK, Denmark, South Africa, and Australia, April 30, 2009, in the Philippines and Dominican Republic, and May 1, 2009. in the United States and Canada. A contest was held on the official website to determine the location of the world premiere on April 27, with the Harkins Theater at the Tempe Marketplace in Tempe, Arizona, ultimately winning the premiere rights. This innovative marketing approach generated additional publicity while creating a sense of community involvement in the film's launch. The release in Mexico was delayed until the end of May due to an outbreak of H1N1 flu in the country. This delay represented one of many ways that global health concerns affected entertainment industry operations, foreshadowing large disruptions that would affect film distribution in subsequent years. Pre-release tracking indicated strong commercial potential despite the ongoing impact of the leaked work print. On April 22, 9 days before the official release, reports indicated that X-Men Origins Wolverine was outselling Iron Man 3-1 at the same point in the sales cycle, 9 days prior to the film's release. This advanced ticket sales performance suggested that the leak had not significantly dampened mainstream audience interest. Home media on September 15, 2009, 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment released X-Men Origins Wolverine on DVD and Blu-ray disc in multiple configurations designed to appeal to different consumer preferences. The 2-disc Blu-ray edition represented the most comprehensive home video package, including commentary by director Gavin Hood, additional commentary by producers Lauren Schuler-Donner and Ralph Winter, and the featurette The Roots of Wolverine, a conversation with X-Men creators Stan Lee and Len Wein. Additional special features included Wolverine Unleashed, The Complete Origins, 10 Character Chronicles, 2 more featurettes, a trivia track, deleted scenes with commentary from Hood, 2 alternate sequences, a Fox Movie Channel premiere featurette, and IMDb BD Live technology. The second disc included a digital copy of the film. A Walmart-exclusive 3-disc set was also released, including a standard DVD copy alongside the Blu-ray content. This retail-specific packaging represented the increasingly common practice of creating exclusive content arrangements with major retailers to drive sales through specific channels. The 2 DVD special edition included the 2 commentaries, the featurette with Stan Lee and Len Wein, an Origins featurette, deleted and alternate scenes, and an anti-smoking PSA on the first disc, with a digital copy on the second disc. The single-disc DVD release contained only the Origins featurette and anti-smoking PSA. Wolverine achieved significant home video success, becoming the highest-selling and most trended DVD release of the week, selling over 3 million copies, with 850,000 of those being Blu-ray units. Through its first 6 weeks, the DVD sold 3.79 million copies, generating $64.27 million in sales revenue. Reception box office. X-Men Origins Wolverine achieved substantial commercial success despite mixed critical reception and the impact of the pre-release leak. The film's opening day performance set the tone for its overall box office run. During its first day of wide release, Wolverine earned an estimated $35 million, with almost $5 million coming from midnight showings. These earnings positioned the film as having the 16th highest grossing opening day ever at that time, 22nd when adjusted for ticket price inflation. The film claimed the number 1 position at the box office with a total opening weekend of $85 million. Among summer season openers, it ranked 5th behind Spider-Man, X2, Spider-Man 3, and Iron Man, while placing in the top 10 of comic book adaptations. The opening performance was lower than the franchise's previous film, X-Men: The Last Stand, as well as X2, but higher than the original X-Men. The worldwide opening exceeded $158.1 million, though Fox acknowledged that some international markets underperformed, attributing this partly to the leaked work print in countries with significant illegal downloading activity. However, this explanation was questioned by industry analysts who noted that other factors, including the H1N1 flu outbreak, complicated direct comparisons between territories. According to Box Office Mojo, X-Men Origins Wolverine grossed approximately $179,883,157 in the United States and Canada, with an additional $193,179,707 in other territories, achieving a worldwide total of $373,062,864. While these figures represented solid commercial performance, they fell short of the financial success achieved by some other entries in the X-Men franchise. Critical response. The critical reception of X-Men Origins Wolverine was decidedly mixed, with reviewers praising certain elements while criticizing others. The film's aggregate review scores reflected this divided response among professional critics. On review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, the film received an approval rating of 37% based on 258 reviews, with an average rating of 5.1. The site's critical consensus read, "Though Hugh Jackman gives his all, he can't help X-Men Origins Wolverine overcome a cliché-ridden script and familiar narrative." On Metacritic, the film scored 40 out of 100 based on reviews from 39 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale. Several critics offered measured praise for specific aspects of the production. Richard Corliss of Time commented that it was an okay, not great, Marvel movie that tells the early story of the Prime X-Man, and attempts to make it climax in a perfect coupling with the start of the known trilogy. He also noted the complexity of superhero mythologies, suggesting that only dedicated comic book readers could fully comprehend all the interconnected elements. Peter Rainer of the Christian Science Monitor praised Jackman's performance specifically, stating that Hugh Jackman demonstrates that you can segue effortlessly from a tuxedoed song and dance man at the Oscars to a feral gent with adamantium claws and berserker rage. Claudia Poog of USA Today considered the movie well acted, with spectacular action and witty one-liners. Bill Gibran of AMC's FilmCritic.com website provided a more positive assessment, giving the film 4.0 out of 5 stars and stating that although Hugh Jackman was capable of carrying even the most mediocre effort, he single-handedly makes X-Men Origins Wolverine an excellent start to the summer 2009 season. However, many critics expressed significant reservations about the film's execution and narrative choices. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 stars out of 4, questioning the dramatic stakes. "Why should I care about this guy? He feels no pain and nothing can kill him, so therefore he's essentially a story device for action sequences." James Berardinelli awarded 2.5 stars out of 4. Calling the action scenes competently executed but not memorable. He criticized the handling of Wolverine's backstory, noting that there's little creativity evident in the way those blanks are filled in and that the revelations made Wolverine less compelling. James Mulliner of GQ criticized the narrative structure, stating that the film clumsily tries to explain the origins of James Howlett, aka Wolverine, which had wisely only ever been briefly referred to in the original X-Men saga. In doing so, it creates a fairly bland plot which is full of holes. Critics also positioned the film within the broader context of the X-Men franchise and the superhero genre. Tom Charity of CNN commented, "Serviceable but inescapably redundant, this Wolverine movie does just enough to keep the X-Men franchise on life support. But the filmmakers will have to come up with some evolutionary changes soon if it's going to escape extinction." A.O. Scott of the New York Times expressed concerns about genre fatigue, stating that X-Men Origins Wolverine will most likely manage to cash in on the popularity of the earlier episodes, but it is the latest evidence that the superhero movie is suffering from serious imaginative fatigue. Philip French of The Observer dismissed the film more harshly, describing the dull, bone-crushing, special effects stuff as of interest only to hardcore fans who've probably read it all in Marvel Comics. Sukhdev Sandhu of the Daily Telegraph was particularly critical of the film's commercial nature, stating that Wolverine is an artificial stimulus package of the most unsatisfying kind, aggressively advertised and hyped to the hills. It will no doubt attract full houses at first. After that though, when word-of-mouth buzzkill goes into overdrive, there's bound to be widespread deflation and a palpable feeling of being conned. Scott Mendelson of the Huffington Post gave the film a grade of D, arguing that Wolverine was the lead character of the X-Men films, and we've already learned everything we need to know from the films in said franchise," adding that the extra information given here actually serves to make the character of Logan, Wolverine, less interesting. Hugh Jackman later acknowledged his own dissatisfaction with the final result, confessing that while he wanted primarily a film that would deepen the Wolverine character, somehow the first Wolverine movie ended up looking like the fourth X-Men, just with different characters. He attempted to avoid similar results in the character's next solo film, 2013's The Wolverine. The film's impact extended beyond critical reception in some concerning ways. 2 documented cases exist of adolescents injecting themselves with elemental mercury after watching X-Men Origins Wolverine, incorrectly believing this would convert their bones to metal, similar to how Wolverine obtains his adamantium skeleton. These incidents highlighted the potential real-world consequences of fictional scientific concepts in popular media. X-Men Origins Wolverine ultimately represented both the commercial success and a creative disappointment. While the film achieved solid box office performance and satisfied some audiences seeking superhero entertainment, it failed to achieve the critical acclaim or cultural impact of earlier entries in the X-Men franchise. The production challenges, from script development through post-production leaks, contributed to a final product that many felt did not fully realize the potential of Wolverine's origin story. The film's mixed reception would influence subsequent approaches to solo character films within the X-Men universe and serve as a learning experience for future superhero origin stories. Review and facts. Number 1. Beastly badass Wolverine. Jackman is a member of elite military squadron Team X, but when he tries to leave violence behind to become a family man, he finds his past catching up with him in brutal fashion, not least his carnage-loving half-brother Sabretooth, Schreiber. Poor Hugh Jackman. For his second movie as both star and producer, after flaccid erotic thriller Deception, he had to rise each day at 4 a.m., presumably swearing, stumbling about and tripping over cats in the process, to drink a protein shake. After a long gym session, he'd head to a set plagued by whispers of studio interference and directorial incompetence. And then, when it was all over and he'd finally managed to have a light-in, an unfinished print of the film leaked onto the internet, getting downloaded 75,000 times within a single day. He must have winced as news of the leak broke. After all, he has a lot at stake. Not since 2004's Van Helsing has the weight of a blockbuster rested squarely on his burly shoulders, and even then he had Dracula, Frankenstein and the Wolfman to help draw on the punters. But through it all, the nicest man in Hollywood remained upbeat. Launching his most iconic character as a standalone hero is, it seems, a labor of love. So were the results worth the pain? Sadly, the answer is no. Not really. Wolverine is not as hateful as X-Men, The Last Stand, but it's still a big old mess. Even a brief prologue in 1840s Canada, showing Wolvie and his half-brother Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, as kids, raises questions that are never answered, like, why does he stop aging when he becomes Hugh Jackman? Or, who the Weapon X is his father and why do we care? The plot is riddled with more holes than a holiday resort for moles. A key scene which has been teased in flashback stabs throughout the X-Men series sees James Logan become Wolverine via extraordinarily painful surgery that coats his skeleton and bone claws with indestructible metal adamantium, overseen by Evil Army's Stryker. But it's hard to take a villain seriously when he's dumb enough to wait until after an invincibility operation to attempt to erase the hero's memory. Later, realizing there's not much in the way of tension when nothing can harm the protagonist, the writers introduce something that can: a gun with adamantium bullets. But later still, Stryker changes his mind and declares that an adamantium bullet would only make Wolverine forget things. How would he know? Such questions would be less pressing were there more of a sense of fun. But Fox, no doubt casting a jealous eye on Warner Brothers' rebooting of Batman, have opted to make the 70s set prequel a fairly glum tale of revenge and betrayal. So its mutton chops begins, with the gruffly tortured, sarky character we love from the X-Men movies modified into an angsty, generic hero who just wants a quiet life but is forced back into action. It's like trading in Han Solo for Luke Skywalker, or considering the mountaintop log cabin and at oneness with nature. Steven Seagal from On Deadly Ground. It doesn't help that Ryan Reynolds, who turns up near the start of the film as sword-spinning mutant Wade Wilson, oozes charisma and the kind of deadpan, one-liner dispensing attitude that Jackman used to possess. His screen time is annoyingly brief, as is that of Dominic Monaghan, whose ill-fated Bolt has an appealing sadness. Much more time is dedicated to rubbish mutants Wraith, rapper Will.I.Am, and the Blob, Lost's Kevin Durand, who belong in another film, or Sky One's Gladiators. Gambit's a letdown too. It's not all bad. Liev Schreiber's Sabretooth is satisfyingly feral, though confusingly motivated. There's an ace opening credits sequence with the siblings in various US combat flashpoints, and linking the end battle to the 3 Mile Island meltdown is smart, but the effects are often shonky and the big twist is a rip-off of Heroes. Wolverine's catchphrase is, "I'm the best at what I do." Judging from this evidence, what he does is star in deeply average actioners. Can everyone stop making moody origin stories now, please? While not a disaster, this isn't the claws-out, rampaging adventure we hoped for. No one cares where Wolverine found his jacket. A spin-off with him kicking ass in Japan would have been way more fun. Number 2. In the garbage-strewn halls of the worst comic book movies ever made, you'll find 2009's X-Men Origins, Wolverine somewhere amongst that heap. X-Men: The Last Stand had put the franchise in an uncertain place, but the movie that would truly begin the tarnishing of its legacy would come 2 years later. Origins is a prime example of what goes wrong when a movie is filmed during a writer's strike, specifically, the 2007-2008 strike, because the script was rushed out the door, much like various other blockbusters to come out in 2009. The resulting film is a tonally dissonant disaster that also features terrible action and VFX so bad that they managed to ruin more characters than just Wolverine. Before he joined the X-Men, Logan was a wanderer who couldn't remember who he truly was. Who was he exactly? Back in 1845, James Howlett discovers that he has bone claws and a healing factor, much like his half-brother, Victor Creed. James and Victor run away from home and live through a century of American wars and conflicts, eventually being recruited by William Stryker around the 70s in search of a mysterious rock in Africa. Logan leaves Victor, and 6 years later, he finds himself living a peaceful Canadian life with his girlfriend Kayla. The past isn't done with Logan, however, as Victor. Broken bar number 3. I was racing to the movie theater, one of the smaller ones in the Los Angeles area, trying to get there before the movie started. My friends were all there waiting on my slow ass, and, as usual, I had left my apartment at the last possible minute. Cursing myself and the slow-ass drivers placed in my path, I hurried while risking the possibility of getting pulled over. With the economy now being located in the center of the earth while we slowly dig towards it, the police are handing out more tickets than ever. Heaven forbid I make some sort of unnecessary donation to them and miss the film. Anyway, with an enormous stroke of luck, I managed to make it to the theater just as the trailers were about to start. I was thankful to find my friends who managed to save a seat for me, and I was even more thankful to miss out on all those stupid commercials AMC Theaters feels the need to inflict on us. It is an addictive thrill to get to where you are going just in the nick of time, and a hard one to get over. It would help if I did, though. Thank God for Japanese machinery, especially with it having almost 200,000 miles on the odometer. I bring this up because my maddening drive to get to the theater on time turned out to be far more exciting than the movie I ended up seeing, X-Men Origins: A Wolverine. It is the 4th movie in the X-Men franchise, and the first big movie of summer 2009. But more importantly, it is also summer 2009's first big disappointment. This has been the case for the past couple of years, with the first big summer movie not meeting expectations. X-Men Origins: Wolverine takes place years before the first X-Men movie, and we get to see the pivotal character of Wolverine as a young boy who ends up committing a violent act he can never take back. As a result, he runs away from home with his half-brother Victor Creed, later to be known as Sabretooth. From there, we get the spectacular opening sequence in which we see the both of them fight in just about every major war they were exposed to throughout their endless lifetimes. From the American Civil War to the Vietnam War, we see them fighting with the other side, taking their hits, and they come out of it all relatively unscathed. Of course, when Wolverine and Sabretooth end up being played by Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber, they stop aging for good. Very convenient for the box office, wouldn't you say? With this being a prequel, a lot of the suspense is sucked out right there because we all know Wolverine is going to survive this adventure and go on to experience many more. Granted, some prequels can be exciting and leave you hanging on the edge of your seat. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a perfect example, but it takes a really good script and precise direction to suck you into the present tense of the movie you are watching. The more you as an audience member are sucked into the moment, the more you forget about the film which chronologically comes after it. But since this franchise has been around since the early part of the 2000s, we have come to know these characters all too well. We know what will happen to them eventually, and we end up spending too much time trying to connect the dots between this and the other X-Men movies. It makes this origin movie a lot less exciting as a result. Seriously. This is X-Men meets the Punisher when you take a close look at the story. We see Wolverine working as a lumberjack after having left Special Ops 6 years ago, and he lives with his girlfriend Kayla Silverfox, the lovely Lynn Collins, in a secluded cabin up in the hills of Canada. But the past, of course, catches up with him like we expect it to. Logan, Wolverine's real name, is approached by William Stryker, Danny Huston playing the same character Brian Cox played in X-Men 2, to get back into action because Victor, Sabretooth is on the loose. Logan says no, and this had me rolling my eyes because we all know Kayla is going to get murdered by Victor, and this will make Wolverine become thirsty for revenge. In doing so, he will be forced to alter his body to where he will become the indestructible animal we already know him as through the previous installments. One of the movie's real stumbling blocks is both Wolverine and Sabretooth are presented as indestructible, no matter how many bullets are shot at them or how many times they get stabbed. We know they will get back up and heal themselves in a matter of seconds. This knowledge affects the movie's big action sequences because, regardless of whether or not they get the bad guys, we know they will come out of it all unscathed. We also know Sabretooth is not going to get his due justice at the end of the story. It gets to where you expect either of these characters to start singing Shoot Me Again by Metallica. You know how that one goes, right? Shoot me again. I ain't dead yet. In terms of performances, Hugh Jackman still delivers the goods as Logan, Wolverine. If you think his successful stint as host of the Oscars might have softened him, you needn't worry. Even with the script which deals with elements we have seen in other movies like this one, he gives this comic book hero a real heart and soul just as he did before. Starting off an X-Men prequel series with this character wasn't a bad idea, but it's a shame the filmmakers did not give him a more original and compelling story. Liev Schreiber also does solid work here as Victor Creed, Sabretooth. While the script could have given the character a little more dimension, Schreiber makes the character an effectively dangerous rival with the never-ending bloodlust, and he keeps our interest along with Jackman throughout the movie's 2-hour running time. The other actors don't fare as well. Danny Huston's portrayal of William Stryker lacks the complex nature Brian Cox brought to the role previously. The fact Stryker's son is a mutant is brought into this film as an afterthought, and it leads to one of the character's more ludicrous moments. Stryker's fate at the end of the film doesn't make much sense either because you can't help but wonder how he managed to become such a powerful military leader by the time we see him in X-Men 2. Ryan Reynolds plays Wade Wilson, Deadpool, and it is same kind of character he played in the dreadful Blade, Trinity. While I got a kick out of Reynolds' sardonic wit and lightning speed with swords, his appearance in Wolverine feels like a wasted opportunity. Reynolds ends up disappearing from the movie too quickly, and we don't see him again until much later. This leaves us with mutants who are nowhere as interesting as the ones we met in the previous X-Men movies. Characters like Agent Zero, played by Daniel Henney, are so one-note, they cease to be interesting almost immediately. In fact, this is my biggest beef with X-Men Origins. Wolverine has an utter lack of character development. The 3 previous films gave us characters to care about as soon as they appeared on screen. Bryan Singer, who directed the first 2 films, really took the time to make us feel what these characters were going through as they were cruelly branded as outcasts. We sympathized with their struggles as they worked with Professor Charles Xavier to coexist peacefully with humans. This made the action sequences all the more exciting. We worried about these characters getting hurt. It was like we got hurt along with them. But with this newest X-Men movie, these characters cease to be as interesting as they once were. They exist here as a means to an end, to guide Wolverine to the point where we first met him. We get introduced to some cool characters like Gambit, but it feels like he is being given only a test run here to see if he will be popular enough to include in future installments. More attention is paid here to the spectacle than anything else, and it shows. There are some great visuals to be found here for sure, but without stronger characters, they just come across as empty. There is no visceral feeling to them, and not much risk is on display. X-Men Origins Wolverine was directed by Gavin Hood, who previously directed the Oscar-winning Tsatsi, as well as rendition which starred Reese Witherspoon and Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm not sure how much of the blame he should take for this one. Word is the production was troubled and that executive producer Richard Donner took over directing duties for a few scenes, and the script was constantly being rewritten. No surprise there. I guess by bringing in an indie director like they did with Singer, the producers were hoping to bring a fresh new perspective to the long-running franchise. But Hood's direction is not exemplary here in the way Singer's was, and he makes this nothing more than an average action movie. There is nothing really special he accomplishes here which could have made this particular comic book movie more unique. Indeed, there are many twists towards the end which serve to define the character of Wolverine. But the more they came, the less I believed them. There are gaps in logic I am willing to forgive in movies, but once I start thinking about them while watching what unfolds on screen, I will undoubtedly have some serious issues. Some plot twists would have required years of preparation for the characters to pull off, and I can't see any of them thinking that far into the future. Much more attention should have been paid to the script, and the characters should have been given top priority. They also should have given this film a much different story than an average one of a man scorned by the loss of love and the need for vengeance. The conflicted hero act worked for a while, but now it feels old. It's hard to dissuade you X-Men fans from seeing this movie, so I'm not going to try. Granted, I'll be interested to hear what you all think of it. You may end up enjoying it far more than I did. Jackman is great as always, but his performance is not enough to save this scripted mess. X-Men Origins Wolverine should serve as a warning for future origin movies and how they should and should not be made. Seeing Wolverine before he goes on his Jason Bourne-like mission takes many of the character's mysteries away and renders him far less intriguing. Sometimes it is better to not know so much about where certain people come from. Number 4 A brutal God of War type action game that is better than the movie itself. Developed by Raven Software, the team behind X-Men Legends, Wolverine is surprisingly good and very gory. It expands on the film's plot by adding extra scenarios and characters. Gameplay is a mix of combo-based combat, light puzzles and platforming. Each level features hidden upgrades and alternate costumes. Overall, this ranks up with The Punisher as another good M-rated Marvel Comics game. I would rate it with a 7.8 out of 10. X-Men Origins Wolverine is an action-adventure game based on the film of the same name. While movie titans are often met with skepticism, this title surprisingly stands out with its intense combat, engaging storyline, and a more mature approach to Wolverine's character. Graphics and design. The visuals in X-Men Origins Wolverine are quite impressive for the time of its release. The environments are richly detailed, ranging from lush forests to grimy military facilities, all giving players a sense of immersion in Wolverine's world. Character models, particularly Wolverine, are well rendered, showcasing the Berserker's ferocity with brutally animated combat sequences. Gameplay mechanics. At its core, the game is a hack-and-slash brawler that focuses heavily on melee combat. Players will find Wolverine's claws are not just for show. The combat mechanics allow for satisfying combos and special abilities. The control scheme is straightforward, making it easy for players to execute attacks and counters. The game also incorporates an upgrade system that lets players improve Wolverine's abilities and unlock devastating moves. Keeping the combat fresh throughout. The standout feature is the game's brutal take on violence. The flow of combat feels visceral and fulfilling as players can dismember enemies and engage in over-the-top finishing moves. This brutality is in line with Wolverine's nature, creating a sense of authenticity to the character and the narrative. Narrative and characters. The storyline acts as an expanded version of Wolverine's backstory, going beyond what the film offered. Players get deeper insights into Logan's past, including his relationships with other characters, such as Sabretooth and the ever-lurking Weapon X program. While the plot follows a somewhat predictable arc, it effectively utilizes various X-Men elements, allowing fans of the franchise to appreciate the lore woven into the gameplay. Sound design. The voice acting is decent, with Hugh Jackman reprising his role as Wolverine, adding a layer of authenticity to the character. Sound effects, especially during combat, enhance the brutal feel of the game, while the soundtrack complementary builds tension during key moments. Final thoughts. X-Men Origins. Wolverine may not have the cinematic polish of the film it ties into, but it more than compensates with solid gameplay and an engaging narrative. It successfully captures the essence of Wolverine as a character, vulnerable yet ferocious, tormented yet heroic. For fans of the X-Men universe or anyone looking for a satisfying action experience, this game is a hidden gem that stands strong in the action-adventure genre. Number 5. What do you want from an action movie? Jaw-dropping action sequences, spectacular and inventive, sharp, witty dialogue and charismatic acting, stunning special effects, and edge-of-your-seat plot that twists like a corkscrew. If those are the things you want, then X-Men Origins, Wolverine will disappoint. This film seems unfinished, particularly the special effects and the clunky changes between footage shot in different locations. You can tell which parts were filmed in New Zealand. The CGI effects often seem stuck on top of the film. Wolverine's claws don't have the correct shadows or reflections, explosions don't always light the environment. Ray Harryhausen could get his sort of thing right with stop motion. Sometimes effects just look silly, like Wolverine, thrown from an explosion, flying towards a helicopter while breaking every rule of Newtonian physics. Parts of the movie are laughably bad, from young Wolverine killing his real father to Sabretooth giant hamster attack style. This is compounded by hammy acting. The script doesn't help the film either. It is without depth, imagination or intentional wit where it has to be sharp, funny and fast. An action movie has to hold a pace that allows your belief to remain suspended. This film often uses slow motion to show off a special effect which breaks the rhythm. In most cases there seems to be no dramatic or artistic reason for doing this. Another thing that slows the film is the use of flashbacks. Reshowing you footage that you have already seen doesn't really add anything to your understanding of a linear plot or shallow characters. It is just boring. When it's a long montage, it's really boring. The narrative is fairly simple. All the characters played to stereotypes: good guy, bad soldier, girlfriend, etc. Often characters do things without logical motivation. Rather, they do what is necessary for the advancement of plot. The plot breaks continuity with the other X-Men films and with itself. You are left wondering things like why Wolverine couldn't smell that chemical on his dead girlfriend when he could smell Sabretooth from a mile away. If you read the comics, you are probably used to shaky continuity, but it shouldn't be this way in a film. The one twist in the plot comes right out of the blue to bring a simple resolution to the plot. The film finally ends with the badly CGI'd Patrick Stewart Deus Xavier, and then you ask, why didn't Dr. X intervene in the finale? One part of the film deserves note. The title sequence shows Wolverine and Sabretooth fighting side by side in America's wars, Civil to Vietnam. It is fast-paced, genuinely exciting and full of references to important war films. It's a shame that the rest of the film is not of the same quality. Starring Hugh Jackman, Liev Schreiber, Danny Huston, Will.I.M., Lynn Collins, Kevin Durand, Dominic Monaghan, Taylor Kitsch, Daniel Henney, Ryan Reynolds, Scott Adkins, Tim Pockett, Julia Blake, Max Cullen, Tahinatazi. Number 6. Movie review. The movie is called X-Men Origins, Wolverine. So before I launch into my review in earnest, a primer on its titular mutant's broken-bar origin. It's 1845. James Howlett, a sickly adolescent, burns with fever as his birth father assaults his mother and brutally kills his stepfather. Overtaken with rage, bony claws sprout from James' forearms for the very first time, and the boy reflexively buries them in the interloper's torso. "What are you?" gasps his horrified mother. Older brother Victor Creed, who sports weaponized fingernails and preternatural dexterity, drags James into the surrounding forest to evade capture. And their life on the lam morphs into a century-spanning odyssey of combat as the feral, fast-healing mutant siblings unleash their bloodlust on the battlefields of America's Civil War, World Wars I and II, and Vietnam. But by this point we've barely moved past the opening credits. Victor's murder of an officer in Vietnam earns an execution that doesn't, take, and a certain Major William Stryker sees opportunity in the event. "I know how special you are," Stryker tells the jailed brothers as he invites them to join his Covert Ops team. Stryker's requirements for his mutant strike force are as clear as his goals are murky: a willingness to kill and an aversion to asking questions. When Stryker commands his troops to wipe out an innocent African village, however, James, who's adopted the name Logan, balks and prevents his bloodthirsty brother from finishing the job. Logan, Victor and Stryker part ways, and the man who will one day be known as Wolverine renounces his violent past. Time check: we're only 20 minutes into the film. So, obviously, the story doesn't end there. The meat of it follows. For a time, Logan finds happiness as a lumberjack in a remote corner of British Columbia, and he falls in love with a schoolteacher named Kayla Silverfox. Then Stryker reemerges with news that someone is murdering the mutant members of his former team. But it's Kayla who soon winds up dead, and the claw marks that strike her car leave no doubt regarding her executioner's identity: Victor Creed. "Why?" Logan asks. "You didn't call, you didn't write," his big brother says. "How else was I supposed to get your attention?" The ensuing melee leaves both men bloodied but Logan bested by his beastly brother. Only now is he willing to submit to Stryker's offer to give you the tools to defeat him: bones and claws fused with an impenetrable alloy known as adamantium. Positive elements. The brothers' relationship wasn't always marked by rancor. When Victor and James escape into the forest as teens, Victor tells his younger sibling, "We're brothers, Jimmy, and brothers protect each other." Victor's lust for violence eventually drives a wedge into that loyalty. But at a crucial moment, Victor saves Logan from almost certain death, joking darkly, "Nobody kills you but me." A recurring theme explores whether anyone can renounce some part of their nature. Both Victor and Stryker believe that the animalistic urge toward violence is inborn, something that cannot be repudiated. "Are you tired of denying your true nature?" Stryker asks the man when he first meets them. Victor's response sounds similar when Logan urges him not to kill a village full of innocent people. "Who do you think we are?" Victor asks. "This is what we do." Logan's reply, "I'm done." Though Logan gives in to his rage at times, he ultimately chooses to believe that he can be something other than an animal or a killer. And when he's at risk of capitulating to that dark nature, Kayla reminds him that he can choose to be something better. An old man Logan meets also plays a role in helping him see that he doesn't have to be held captive by his violent nature. As the intricate plot unfolds, it becomes apparent that Stryker is hunting mutants, imprisoning them and performing experiments on them, apparently driven by the misguided notion that such work benefits society as a whole. He uses what he learns to create a supermutant that's designed to do his evil bidding, and he suggests that because Victor and Logan are freaks of nature, normal morality doesn't apply to them. None of that is positive, but Stryker is so obviously the villain here that pretty much everything he does is presented as the wrong thing to do. Wolverine's confrontation of Stryker involves freeing the captive mutants, and as is usually the case in the superhero genre, various mutants act as heroes as they put their lives on the line to rescue and save others. Spiritual elements. Kayla tells Logan a story presumably drawn from Canada's native population that personifies the moon and talks about how it once had a lover but no longer does. The story repeatedly mentions mythological beings in the spirit world. Logan reconnects with a former teammate who hints at eternal consequences for their brutal past. Sexual romantic content. Unmarried, Logan and Kayla live together. A lingering shot shows Logan shirtless. In the same scene, Kayla wears one of his flannels. Her bare legs are briefly seen, and it's implied the couple has just gotten out of bed. After a nightmare in which Logan's claws engage, we see Kayla wrapped in a sheet, shoulders, and claw marks on her arms visible. Another shot pictures her in a revealing nightgown of sorts as she climbs suggestively onto Logan's lap. After his adamantium procedure, Logan erupts from a tank of water and escapes the facility nude. From 3 or 4 angles, the camera spies his backside and flank as he flees and plunges into a waterfall. Shortly thereafter, Logan, still naked, hides in a barn. A farmer finds him and offers him a coat, saying, "Cover that up. Don't want you giving the old lady a heart attack." Violent content. It's nearly meaningless for me to tell you that comic book violence fills Wolverine without defining it as comic book violence circa 2009. It's pounding, graphic, dark and intense, yet it retains a sanitized, unrealistic feel. For example, Logan repeatedly impales his brother with his claws. We watch as the adamantium-laced blades slice through Victor's torso, his chest, even his neck, and yet, when Logan pulls them out, they're not dripping with blood. It's the same story when Logan gets run through with the sword. There's not even much blood shown when Logan decapitates an enemy mutant in the finale. We watch as the head and body plunge separately down a cooling tower shaft, when Stryker shoots Logan in the head twice, once at point-blank range. We see remnants of the slug sticking out of his skull. But blood and gore aren't part of the picture. In fact, just about the only blood in the film involves Kayla's death, where we see her on the ground, her throat wounded, her clothes drenched and red. A bit of blood is visible later when a woman gets shot. Logan's battles with Victor include not only skirrings, but scores of wince-inducing body blows. Ditto his rumble with the enormous Fred J. Dukes, aka the Blob. Pre-adamantium, Victor shears off all 3 claws on one of Logan's hands, adding insult to injury, or just injury to injury. A logging truck dumps its payload onto Logan with Victor's help. We also watch as large-gauge needles, more like small drill bits, actually bore into Logan's skull and torso at various points to inject his bones with adamantium. Elsewhere, Logan makes mincemeat of 2 Humvees and a helicopter. Worth noting, in the latter scene, Logan intentionally ignites spilled helicopter fuel by sparking it with his claw, which results in an explosion that kills one of Stryker's henchmen. Combat montages show soldiers shooting, fighting and falling. Victor's ferocious nature is especially apparent when he turns a large-caliber machine gun on German soldiers in a pillbox during Stryker's team kills a room full of men in an assault on a criminal diamond dealer. And it just keeps coming. Victor snaps a guy's neck. 2 elderly people are brutally murdered by Stryker's agents. They're each shot, and then the building they're in is blown up by rockets. A mutant infuses playing cards with explosive energy. A laser beam cuts through a school. A tank explodes. Astonishing gunplay echoes scenes from The Matrix. It's implied that a man's heart gets ripped out. A climatic battle involves 2 mutants fighting a third, destroying a nuclear reactor's cooling tower in the process. We witness the unveiling of Stryker's latest Frankensteinian creation, Weapon 11. As he's being created, we see a disturbing image of his face apparently without eyelids, eyeballs bulging wide, mouth stitched shut. In the name of protecting society, Stryker stabs a general who questions his program. Wolverine's 30-plus expletives include 5 S-words and about a dozen misuses of Jesus or God's names, including 3 pairings of the latter with Dan. Vulgarities include Hakamadan, Akama Ahole and Bossy H. Wolverine offers a take on the middle finger by lowering his outside claws in an angry gesture. James and Victor's birth father is said to be drunk when he attacks their family. Several scenes show Logan chomping on his signature cigar. Victor drinks at a bar. Another mutant drinks at home. Other characters consume alcohol in bars in Las Vegas and New Orleans. Conclusion: Wolverine is one of the edgier characters in the Marvel Universe, and his first solo pick reflects that reality. The film lives in the same general territory as the previous X-Men flicks, even as it inexorably amps up the content when it comes to violence and language. Apparently, we have The Dark Knight to thank for that. 20th Century Fox co-chairman Tom Rothman told Entertainment Weekly, X-Men Origins, Wolverine, is very bad and we knew it would push the furthest limit of PG-13. But once Dark Knight came out, we saw that there wasn't any level of intensity we couldn't go to. In the most literal, and probably the most important, sense, Wolverine makes good on Rothman's boast. Whereas The Dark Knight hinted at graphic violence as often as it showed it, this film dispenses with such an approach en route to the proverbial jugular. And so we get multiple impalings courtesy of Wolverine's 6 sharp claws, decapitation, a pistol to the head, and the camera rarely pulls away. In another way, though, the comparison breaks down. Wolverine lacks the philosophical gravitas of previous X-Men films, which often alluded to how we should treat those who are different from us. And never mind asking the weighty ethical questions The Dark Knight tried to raise, some of which made that film feel even darker than it was on the surface. We do get a bit of banter about whether a man can change his nature or not, and that question may spark a few good after-movie discussions. But that's not really what the 4th film in this franchise is about. No, what we have here is an unpretentious, unapologetic actioner. Whatever messages might get lobbed along the way, they're never much more complex than Wolverine's adamantium-laced claws and his growling credo, "I'm the best at what I do," he tells Kayla, "and what I do isn't very nice." In the famous words of Marvel Comics creator Stan Lee, enough said. Number 7. It's official. Logan is one of the most critically acclaimed superhero movies since The Dark Knight. Its critical and commercial success is richly merited, but something of a shock considering that just 8 years ago, the standalone Wolverine trilogy began with the clumsily titled, shockingly misconceived X-Men Origins. Wolverine Origins made enough money to keep the franchise going, but in terms of quality, critical appeal, and popular appeal, it was a lot closer to Batman Robin than it was to Batman Begins. Bad as it was, though, the movie also serves as a helpful blueprint for what not to do in a superhero movie, and watching it again proves that Logan succeeds largely by doing the opposite of what Origins did at every turn. The primary advantage of a Wolverine solo movie is that it puts the focus squarely on a standout character with both animal magnetism and emotional depth. So why is Origins in such an awful hurry to sideline Wolverine in order to highlight a battery of other mutants, each seemingly worse and more misguided than the last? The film's worst crime may be its treatment of Deadpool, which almost ended the character's cinematic life before it began. Yes, this was the first movie that cast Ryan Reynolds in the role of Wade Wilson, a chatterbox, wisecracking mercenary who becomes a smartass, mercenary mutant superkiller. And yes, he's introduced as a watered-down, PG-13 but still moderately amusing version of the badass who conquered pop culture last year. Then Deadpool disappears for over an hour, and when he returns, the man-mutant known popularly as the Merc with the Mouth has somehow become a brainwashed, personality-free, attitudinally challenged Merc with his mouth sewn shut. If Origins had intentionally set out to depict Deadpool in a way that would enrage fans and play against the character's strengths, it couldn't have done a better job. Deadpool is joined by a rogues gallery of ill-conceived Wolverine foils: Fred Dukes, the Blob, Kevin Durand, a southern fried pile of goo who looks and acts like Jabba the Hutt crossed with the Dukes of Hazzard's boss Hagwell.I.M., as teleporting mutant John Wraith, who manages to wear out his welcome despite only being on screen a few minutes, and Taylor Kitsch's Rami LeBeau, Gambit, a mutant card sharp who's essentially a Mardi Gras float that somehow became sentient and developed superpowers. After Deadpool and Wolverine, Gambit is the next mistreated Origins character due for redemption. Channing Tatum is attached to star as LeBeau in a long-gestating standalone film that will likely shoot in 2018. X-Men Origins at least attempts, intermittently, to capture the angst that has long defined Wolverine. It aspires to tragedy, but has to settle for merely being dur. It is devoid of genuine pathos, yet full of Wolverine howling with emo rage whenever someone close to him dies. Origins is a film of compromise and calculation, a movie where the elements that aren't shop-worn and arbitrary are egregiously wrong. It is a film without conviction, without insight, and thankfully, the team behind the insanely lucrative but tricky X-Men franchise seemed to understand that. in a red carpet interview for the British premiere of X-Men, Days of Future Past in 2014, producer Lauren Schuler Donner laughingly implored the public, just forget about X3 and the first Wolverine, Origins, forget about that too. So after Origins, Fox was smart enough to hand over keys to the Wolverine franchise to Heavy and Girl, interrupted director James Mangold, a serious filmmaker whose direction of movies like Walk the Line illustrated his gift for tortured, self-loathing, and larger-than-life anti-heroes. The X-Men movies are, after all, meant to be about outsiders and grounded characters, as Schuler Donner recently told Vanity Fair, with the exception of Origins, which has little to say about the larger social and political issues the franchise has been addressing for decades in multiple media. Enter Logan, a film with the courage of its convictions, a movie whose darkness, profanity, and sometimes stomach-churning violence feel not only organic and justified but necessary. It's a powerful comment on the anxiety-fraught lives of immigrants, illegal and otherwise, caught between countries and worlds. And it's also a film with real heart and soul, perhaps best exemplified in its treatment of Professor X. Number 8. Few people have kind things to say about X-Men Origins, Wolverine. Receiving terrible reviews when it was released in May 2009, the film was meant to extend the X-Men cinematic universe in a unique way, giving Hugh Jackman's mutant anti-hero Logan his own standalone film after being one of the main attractions in X-Men, X2, X-Men United and X-Men, The Last Stand, which at that point was one of Hollywood's most lucrative franchises. So, 20th Century Fox figured, why not keep the gravy train rolling? Let's make a movie where audiences get to see how Logan became Wolverine. Surely that would be a hit. Truth is, X-Men Origins, Wolverine was commercially successful but not a big enough smash to justify the studio continuing in that specific direction for future films. Plus, it cannot be overstated how much true blue comic fans despise the movie. Still, that 2009 film has been discussed more in recent times than it has in years because of the imminent arrival of Deadpool Wolverine, which will be the second big screen pairing of those two Marvel characters. To the first, of course, was in X-Men Origins, Wolverine, which featured Ryan Reynolds as a very different iteration of Deadpool. Even if you've never seen X-Men Origins, Wolverine, you're probably aware of it because of how much Reynolds has made fun of that film in his two Deadpool movies. If you revisit X-Men Origins, Wolverine, you will not discover a misunderstood masterpiece. To be honest, I didn't hate it when I saw it in 2009. I thought it was pretty disposable, although Jackman was predictably great, but I hadn't given it a single thought in the last 15 years. But to prepare for Deadpool Wolverine, I gave it a fresh watch. The movie's still not good, but what was striking was realizing I was witnessing the beginning of an industry era that's still with USA. If anything, it's even more pervasive today. X-Men Origins, Wolverine remains bad, but it also represents the dawn of Hollywood's spin-off age. And that era's problems are embodied in this movie. X-Men Origins, Wolverine was by no means the first spin-off film, and it wasn't even the first film of this kind spawned from a blockbuster. The Fugitive begat U.S. Marshals. Brendan Fraser's Mummy films gave us The Scorpion King. Daredevil paved the way for Elektra. The Barbershop series opened the door for Beauty Shop. Bruce Almighty was so huge that we got Evan Almighty. Those earlier spin-off movies had two things in common. One, they were mediocre. And two, with a few exceptions, they failed to be financial successes. Not many people would think back on those spin-offs fondly. Generally speaking, they felt a little desperate, a little undignified, or merely vain attempts to extend franchises beyond their logical endpoint. True, The Scorpion King was actually a fairly sizable hit, but its sequels were cheapo straight-to-video affairs that didn't feature Dwayne Johnson. To varying degrees, spin-offs were considered weird, vaguely embarrassing cash grabs. Of course, those studios and filmmakers probably went into those projects with lofty aspirations. Still, Fox's attempt to make a Wolverine spin-off was treated as an ambitious undertaking and a major event. There is no property more sacred to us than X-Men. Fox's co-president of production Alex Young told Entertainment Weekly before X-Men Origins, Wolverine's release. In that same interview, Young acknowledged the movie was more expansive than its predecessors. It's bigger in scale and size than any of the other X-Men movies. He said, "It's also more primal and visceral. We haven't even come close to this pitch of intensity and fury." Dismiss that as typical studio hype if you must, but at least it suggested that Fox was serious about X-Men Origins Wolverine, which traced Logan's early days as he grows up with his half-brother Victor, Liev Schreiber, both of them blessed, cursed with mutant powers. They fight side by side in America's most historic wars, the Civil War, the two World Wars, Vietnam, before being recruited by Major William Stryker, Danny Huston, to join his elite, super-secret team of mutant warriors. But soon after Logan sours on the distasteful government ops they're assigned to execute, walking away from the group. But, of course, there's no getting out and Stryker sends his other soldiers to eliminate Wolverine, including Victor. Even before it hit theaters, X-Men Origins Wolverine was in trouble. Production delays, a rumor drift between the producers and filmmaker Gavin Hood about the movie's creative direction, an unfinished script imperiled by the Writers Guild of America strike of 2007 and 2008. Any type of bad buzz you can imagine, this flick had it. Even worse, at the end of March 2009, the film leaked on the internet, which hurt Fox financially. Just as importantly, though, the leak revealed the movie's myriad flaws. The studio tried to insist it was only a work print, but the damage was done. Our fans now knew X-Men Origins Wolverine was a dud. Put it this way, that Entertainment Weekly piece I quoted earlier focused almost entirely on the online leak and the behind-the-scenes creative differences, forcing executives and Jackman to go into spin mode. If you're putting out a movie you hope will be a blockbuster, that's not how you want the promotional tour to go. Enough people have written about X-Men Origins Wolverine's creative failures that there's not much need to reiterate them. But I would say that, watching this movie in 2024, it's clear that so many of its issues stem from the general problem with spin-offs, a problem still with us today. The first red flag is right there in the title. X-Men Origins Wolverine is an ungainly mouthful primarily because Fox undoubtedly wanted to cover its bases, making sure that you knew that this movie is about that Wolverine guy that you saw in those X-Men flicks. Also, the studio was planning at one point to do a similar spin-off film for Magneto, with X-Men Origins being used as the linking title to these side projects. If you wonder why modern spin-offs have titles like A Quiet Place, Day One or Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, that's your explanation. The underlying IP needs to be front and center. But the title is the least of this film's weaknesses, strange as it might sound. I think part of the reason critics were so down on X-Men Origins Wolverine is that they hadn't yet dealt with the glut of spin-offs that were soon going to come our way. This odd mutant strain of film was, then, kinda new, almost novel in its departure from the franchise's main storyline while, at the same time, spending a whole narrative on a character we already knew pretty well. Not just a spin-off but also a prequel and an origin story. X-Men Origins Wolverine was a cluster bomb of all the event movie subgenres that would come to dominate the multiplex. We just didn't realize it yet. That said, if X-Men Origins Wolverine had been artistically successful, that novelty might have been more rewarding. Instead, we were saddled with an uninspired origin story, which is often the form that spin-off films take. Like many of them, X-Men Origins Wolverine sought to explain mysteries of the character's backstory, some of which, I would argue, most of us didn't actually care about. How did Wolverine get that adamantium skeleton? Okay, yes, that would be interesting to learn. What made him so angry? I'm cool not knowing, had he ever spent a lot of time hanging out in the Canadian woods in order to stay off the grid? Wait, I'm sorry, what? The movie provided those answers along with one that every spin-off/origin story simply must supply, which is, hey, how did this guy get his cool name? The allure of origin stories is their ability to pull back the curtain, introducing us to a beloved character before they were fully formed. And if it's a spin-off from a popular franchise, that also means the film can potentially try to depart from the tone and feel of the main movies. I'm in the minority because I actually like the Star Wars spin-off films. but one of the reasons I'm fond of both Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and Solo, a Star Wars story. See what I mean about those ungainly titles? A is that they consciously don't feel like typical Star Wars movies. Rogue One was a heist, war flick. Solo masqueraded as a buddy cop comedy. If Jackman had had his way, X-Men Origins, Wolverine would have done something similar, seeking a darker feel than the earlier X-Men movies. That's why he pushed to hire Hood, who directed the crime drama Tsatsi, which won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, but had no experience helming franchise features. As Hood later recalled, he'd seen Tsatsi, and he really felt that he wanted to try to make this film about a guy who is a superhero, but doesn't really like what he does and has all this post-traumatic stress disorder. Crucially, this was the first X-Men film to come out after 2008's The Dark Knight, a magnificently somber, epic comic book movie that profoundly shifted how Hollywood thought of these properties. In that new preview, Fox's co-chairman Tom Rothman indicated as much, pumping up X-Men Origins, Wolverine as very badass, and we knew it would push the furthest limit of PG-13. But once A Dark Knight came out, we saw that there wasn't any level of intensity we couldn't go to. Why X-Men Origins, Wolverine fails, of course, is that the studio didn't have the courage of its convictions, resulting in an unfocused film that's half dark and half goofy, and it's especially goofy during moments when it's supposed to be dark. Logan's cherished girlfriend Kayla, played by Lynn Collins, dies in his arms. Cue hilariously melodramatic overhead shot of Jackman bellowing, "No!" to the skies. X-Men Origins, Wolverine was quippy 1 minute, then ultra-serious the next, the two styles failing to cohere. Reynolds' wisecracking Wade Wilson, who will become Deadpool, feels grouted on from another film. Indeed, Reynolds has said he had to come up with his own dialogue on set. Just because audiences like this X-Men world before, it doesn't mean they'll follow it anywhere. Hood and the producers never could decide on exactly what tone they wanted. Instead of settling on one, they flailed around with several. Sometimes, the lead singer of a successful band will do a solo album, either because he's sick of the rest of the group or wants to pursue different styles than what he's known for. What often happens in these cases is that, while the solo album is superficially appealing, it seems like it's missing something. And, of course, what it's lacking is the band you associate with the lead singer. Spin-off films can create a similar sensation. Wait, where are the other guys? As compelling as Jackman was in the X-Men movies, what made those films succeed was the ensemble, the mix of villains and heroes. The sense that these individual mutants were part of a larger community, even if some of them were foes. X-Men Origins, Wolverine didn't introduce a single new character as interesting as Charles Xavier or Magneto or Jean Grey, but there sure were a lot of a backing band, if you will, of subpar session players. Rather than allowing Wolverine to command center stage, X-Men Origins made him seem lackluster around such dull company. You missed his cool buddies and vivid enemies from the previous films. So, yes, X-Men Origins, Wolverine has deserved its reputation as one of the worst Marvel installments, and yet, it predicted the future of franchises. Fast Furious presents, Hobbs Shaw, Spiral, From the Book of Saw, Bumblebee, Creed, Annabelle, Ocean's 8, the Lego Batman movie, Birds of Prey, Puss in Boots. Even Deadpool is itself a spin-off. Nothing ever dies, and now it just gets recycled for an adjacent motion picture. In a different age, we might have gotten films like Gwind, A Jaws story, or Godfather Origins, Sonny Corleone. Although you're well within your rights to argue that The Godfather Part 2 is sort of a Vito Corleone origin story, modern spin-offs vary in quality, but X-Men Origins, Wolverine showed studios how they could be done, maybe not well, but certainly good for a company's bottom line. Jackman's first Wolverine flick didn't get much right, but that it certainly did.